Employees of a company all choose one of three levels of health coverage, for which premiums denoted by X are 1, 2, and 3, respectively. Premiums are subject to a discount denoted by Y. It's 0 for smokers and 1 for non-smokers. The joint probability function of X and Y is given below. Calculate the variance of X minus Y. So X takes on 1, 2, and 3, and Y takes on 0 and 1. So since we need the variance of X minus Y, so we call the X minus Y as a new variable, so we call it Z, and therefore we have to find variance of Z. So X is the premium and Y is the discount, therefore the discount has to be less than or equal to premium, because premium is like the price, so the discount can never be greater than the price. The discount always has to be less than or equal to the price, therefore the discount always has to be less than or equal to the premium. And we have the following table. Remember, X could only be 1, 2, and 3, since X is the premium and Y is a discount, and Y was given to be only 0 and 1, 0 for smokers, 1 for non-smokers. So we could have X and Y as X could be 1, and you could have the full discount, and Y could be, in this case, Y could be 0 and 1. So the way we are tabulating these values are according to the Z, because Z is the one whose variance we want. So Z is X minus Y, and keeping in mind that X always has to be greater than or equal to Y. So the minimum value of Z could be 0, and that only happens when X is 1 and Y is 1. Because remember, the Y values could only be 0 and 1, and X is never 0. X is either 1, 2, or 3, as here. So the only way X minus Y could be 0 is that if X is 1 and Y is 1 based on these values. So in this case, the probability would be 2 over 31 based on the function, because the probability function is X squared plus Y squared over 31. So when X is 1 and Y is 1 in this function, then the probability is 1 plus 1 over 31. That would be 2 over 31. Similarly, you can see that Z, the next value of Z would be 1, and that can only happen when X is 1 and Y is 0. Because remember, Z is X minus Y, or when X is 2 and Y is 1. So since Y is limited to being 0 and 1, so the only way the X and Y difference could be 1 is, so when Y is 0, X has to be 1, and then when Y is 1, X has to be 2. So then we calculate the probability function at 1, 0, which ends up being 1 over 31, and then at 2, 1, and it ends up being 5 over 31. Again, remember, the probability function is X squared plus Y squared over 31. So when X is 1, Y is 0, this is 1 over 31, and then X is 2, and Y is 1, so that's 2 squared plus 1 squared, so that's 5, and 5 over 31. And when you add the 2, you get 6 over 31, and similarly for 2, 0, and for 3, 0. So the Z value would be 2 when X is 2 and Y is 0, or when X is 3 and Y is 1. Again, remember, Y is limited to being 0 and 1. So when Y is 0, X has to be 2 to produce the difference of 2. And then Y is 1, X has to be 3 in order to produce a difference of 2. And again, we substitute and get the corresponding probabilities. And that's 14 over 31 in this case. And similarly, Z value of 3, which is the maximum Z that can be obtained. Remember, the maximum X is 3, so the maximum Z could be 3, and that can only happen when Y is 0. So 3 minus 0 gives you a 3, and in that case, the probability comes out to be 9 over 31. And since, remember, we had to find variance of Z, so we would need E of Z and E of Z squared. So therefore, to get E of Z, we need the ZP values. Remember, E of Z would be the summation of all the ZPs. And Z is this column, P is this column. So you multiply 2 over 31 with 0, you get 0, and then you multiply 6 over 31 with 1, you get 6 over 31. Similarly, 14 over 31 times 2 is 28 over 31. And 9 over 31 times 3 is 27 over 31. So when you add all the summation ZP, you get E of Z. That's 61 over 31. Similarly, you need Z squared P values because the sum of summation of Z squared P would be. So remember, the way we remember the expectation value formula is summation of Z, F of Z, and F of Z in this case is P. Remember, F of Z is the probability. And so to get the Z squared P values, you use the squared values over here. So 0 squared is still 0. So you end up getting the same as you got for ZP. Same for 1. 1 squared is 1. And then 2 squared is 4. So that's twice of this. So therefore, it makes sense that it would end up being twice of this 28 over 31. And similarly, 3 squared is 3 times 3. So you'll have 3 times this one. So, or you can think of Z squared as 9. And then when that 9 gets multiplied with the probability, so 9 times 9 over 31 is 81 by 31, which is this. So when you sum all this column, you get E of Z squared. That's the summation of Z squared F of Z, or Z squared P. So that's 143 over 31. Now we are ready to get the variance. That's E of Z squared minus EZ whole square. So that's 143 by 31 minus 61 by 31 whole square. That ends up being 0.74. That is choice C.